When people hear the name Gojo Satoru, many thoughts come to mind, but the thing common across all descriptions of Gojo has to be the strongest. This is without question the quality he's most known for, but is it truly defining of him? Is he Gojo because he's the strongest, or is he the strongest because he's Gojo? Does the strength make him who he is, or is he something more? And as I'll explain here, he is indeed more. With that said, him being the strongest is executed rather robustly, and shouldn't be used as a basis to label Gojo a mediocre character. Quickly though, please like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like these, and let's get into it. While Gojo's character is not limited to being strong, his strength is conveyed in great detail and to great effect on the characters, the plot, and the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. To gain enough context, we'd be wise to look back at the place where it all began, the inventory arc, where Gojo would be pushed down the road that would lead him to the place he is today, a character-defining arc. At the start of it, we see a Gojo not so dissimilar from the one today, goofing around, making light of his run-ins with enemies, dropping Digimon references, and being dismissive of the status quo imposed by the higher-ups. Things up to this point have likely been relatively mundane for Gojo. Went on a few missions, beat up some curses, and even as a little kid, he rocked the world with ridiculous strength, setting standards that triggered evolution, forcing curses and criminals to adapt, to become strong themselves. This is one way in which Gojo's existence shapes the world around him. Additionally, it's a theme that's on track to re-emerge in an even crazier way, if Kenjaku's plan to evolve cursed spirits to the next level comes to fruition. Additionally, a fear in the world resembling Sukuna in the Heian era, though not as evil, started to return, as talked about in the fanbook, which fits into the greater parallel and anti-parallel between the opposing powerhouses of the verse that we'll explore soon. Adding on to the list of achievements under Child Gojo's belt comes his remarkable encounter with an ex-member of the Zenin clan, an interaction that left a long-lasting psychological scar on the legend that is Toji Zenin. You see, Toji is the invisible man. He's an assassin by trade, and no one has ever been aware of his presence when he was behind them. That is, until he met Gojo. And you can tell this cut deep. Toji is elevated to what feels like god status whenever he's talked about or shown, to the one who left it all behind, and his overwhelming intensity. For Maki, he's the mountain to climb, going beyond extremely strong fighters in their own right, like Naoya, a prodigy from the prestigious Zenin clan, a clan that exists on the whim of Toji. But even Gojo, as a child, can shake the confidence of this nigh omnipotent man known as the Sorcerer Killer. This run-in with Gojo shapes the plan Toji would concoct to bring him down, some 10 years later, to remove his lingering doubts. This would turn out to be highly effective. His return to battle in inventory is sudden and brutal. In Gojo's most vulnerable moment, he finally let his guard down. The man supposed to be untouchable is subject to a brutally violent assault. Toji devours Gojo, stabbing him into oblivion, and then goes on to feast on his tarnished reputation, flaunting his kill in front of Geto. Without knowing defeat, one cannot appreciate the gift of success. Gojo had to learn. He needed to be brought down to earth, bleeding out on the ground, in order to discover something all the more beautiful, a truth in that state of near death that had evaded him his whole life, the core of cursed energy, unearthing a new potential that only those who have known the fleeting embrace of life can relate to. Gojo would be changed forever, his mind awakened, reborn a new man, claiming a feeling of freshness despite having just been carved to pieces, pushed beyond his mental limits, into a state of euphoric insanity and detached excitement, preparing to face off against his slayer, bearing a huge smile on his face. All of this serves to make Gojo's power much more weighted, through understanding where it came from, the hardship he faced to reach that point, the mental trauma portrayed in great detail that shaped him into the Honored One, the rebirth from the ashes that would allow him to reach the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery, crushing even the likes of Toji and becoming the strongest. At this point, just Gojo's stare has enough impact to corrupt Toji's mind, setting him up for failure before the fight begins, making him jealous of the power of the awakened limitless, wanting to discredit it, the pinnacle of the Jujutsu world, the person that stands for everything Toji, someone without any cursed energy, someone shunned by his clan for lacking Jujutsu, rejects as the Sorcerer Killer, for self-affirmation, to show that even a monkey like him can overcome sorcery's finest. But it's this need to prove himself over another that amounts to his decay as a fighter. As Sukuna tells Jogo, comparing themselves to those around them leads to weakness and stunts their growth. You should have burnt everything you desire down to a cinder without thinking to reach the heights of Gojo Satoru, a mentality that Toji fails to uphold. And in Gojo, it triggers a state of true ascension, no longer bleeding on the ground, but flying high, unbounded from all worldly concerns, with clouds seen behind him, posing with a musician's sense of composure and finesse, truly in the zone, truly serene, bearing his ego in full force. There is no one else that matters but him. There's no need for comparisons. The only being that can compete with him is him, as he regains his status as the untouchable, standing at the pinnacle of this hierarchy that every sorcerer is tasked with traversing. Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one, an unstoppable flood of self-worth, so powerful it erases every sense of moral consideration for others. His friends being killed means nothing in this moment. He won't kill out of a need for revenge. Nonetheless, he will put an end to Toji, burning him to cinders without thinking, as he desires, like a calamity, providing the background for understanding the unique mentality that ties Sukuna and Gojo together, that which surpasses the horizons of sorcerers, cursed spirits, and strong fighters. Its overwhelming aggression that disregards all else. Despite no change to his physical appearance, there's a drastic change in the air around Gojo. This immense shift in Gojo's nature is emphasized by him being unrecognizable to his best friend, his spirit bleeding out beyond the surface. Precisely what happens when Gojo uses domain, expanding his inner realm outward to engulf his enemies in the power of the infinite that flows through him. And faced with this reality, his opponent can do nothing but freeze, as they descend into the imperceivable bottomless ocean of mind-numbing experiences. But the setting appears more as a realm in outer space, complementing Gojo's transcendent existence. It takes a while until we get to see Gojo returning to anything resembling his old ways. But when the curses overrun Shibuya, it's time for that suppressed demon to re-emerge, moving in that same higher-than-thou way, floating into battle arms spread out, without a care, to kill curses, a body language befitting of the honored one. Every move made is one with impact as he steps forward, the pace of the manga bending to his power. He walks up to the disaster curses with his guard down, as if he were crossing the street, staring into their souls with that absolute focus, exercising Hanami as if it were a menial task, fulfilling his promise that he would be the first to fall, enforcing a sense of complete control Gojo brings to a battle against some of the most chaotic and destructive beings. Even with his abilities restricted, he pulverizes Hanami, revealing to us for a moment that madness he keeps hidden under the surface. The plan of Kinjaku and the curses in the train station is to cut off Gojo from his power through the invisible barrier that is Gojo's moral compass, perhaps his only weakness, his unwillingness to cause unneeded death to humans. Because of this, he's temporarily detained, and through this restriction, Gojo is once again driven to adapt and overcome, to innovate in ways that allow his power to shine through and regain the control he's become accustomed to. And he achieves this through the creation of a 0.2-second domain, a game-winning idea forced out of him in the moments before failure, and the small window of freedom he creates for himself creates a whiplash effect where the floodgate holding back Gojo's overwhelming intensity breaks as he proceeds to tear through the area with his bare hands, moving like a high-speed wave, tearing Mahito's transfigured humans to pieces. These are the actions of the strongest. As the narrator steps in to affirm concretely, even the story itself must pay its respect to Gojo. But all this power came as an opportunity for Gege. Since Gojo's become the bedrock upon which the Jujutsu Society stands, the ripple effects across the entire series is immediately felt once he gets sealed. The shield protecting Jujutsu sorcerers from the brunt of their cruel world is gone. Curses are now running wild and unchecked, and all other obligations are put aside in the face of this transcendent purpose: free Gojo to save everyone. In his absence, it becomes quickly understood just how much we needed him. The floodgate of evil that he existed as is gone, and things start getting much darker for sorcerers as a whole. At times during his extended absence, the only light at the end of the tunnel seemed to be Gojo's rescue. Desperation for the characters and audience has set in, and for some 130 chapters, we waited. We'll talk about Gojo's return in a moment, but first I need to speak on the less power-centric aspects of Gojo's character, primarily his students and morality. I began this video by suggesting that Gojo is more than just a strong character, and the first place to look in order to realize this is in the weakness of Gojo. I previously mentioned how the domain is in a sense the externalization of his internal reality, but this is a double-edged sword, as the effect it has on those within it is rather well aligned with the trouble he faces more broadly. As Gojo describes it, given everything but unable to do anything. It's not enough for Gojo to be strong. This won't stop his closest companion from falling into darkness as a response to the scars inflicted by their lifestyle. He lacks the strength to shield their souls, and this bypasses the physical defense of Gojo with ease. And even with the power to stop his friend from pursuing this insane goal of wiping out the humans, Gojo was unable to kill Geto. This experience makes Gojo question himself, needing affirmation from others that he's strong. With failures like this, it raises the question, will Gojo be able to save Megami, or will his soul be lost forever? Another fallout onto Gojo's mental from this loss is a newfound sense of loneliness. We can think back to how he felt content facing the challenges of the world, knowing that Geto was there, perhaps having even more union as a team than Yuji and Megami. But later down the timeline, we can see an emphasis on being alone from Gojo. His perspective now is that a sorcerer's job is an individual sport. You can't be looking to sacrifice yourself for others, and you'll always die alone. We see a similar sentiment from Geto, as he says being a sorcerer is like running a marathon. But what if at the end of the road is a mountain of your fellow sorcerers' corpses, meaning there's no one you can count on one to remain at your side till the end, something Gojo learned the hard way upon the departure of Suguru Geto. This is an idea that is also well applied to Gojo's fighting style, as he's just so powerful that everyone else holds him back. But what this means, as Kenjaku informs us, is that when it comes to battle, Gojo's at his best when he's alone. With his power comes isolation from others. Gojo, drunk off all that power, also found himself in a moral void for a time. With a hollow stare, he says that to him right now wouldn't feel anything were they to kill every person in the room, as if the rest of the world was merely a simulation that Gojo controlled from above, crossing the moral line Megumi spoke of, which is, I will not kill you, so please don't kill me. You should acknowledge each other's mutual existence. He faults his enemy for ignoring this, to feed their stupid ego. And what is the mindset of the Honored One? As we covered before, a supremely ego-driven existence, where no one else matters. And this divide of personal philosophy can be seen manifesting in the lessons that Gojo gives Megumi, where for greater power, he requires a deeper selfishness. But for the truly powerful, it's hard to maintain a sense of government. Rather, Gojo is prone to a sense of arbitrarity in the world, that the duty of sorcerers and duty in general is just imaginary. It's the weak that use reason and hold responsibilities, and protecting them is something he can't concern himself with. It's Geto who tries to instill this sense of duty into Gojo from the beginning of Inventory, and ultimately Gojo would come around to it, but not before Geto had lost it. Before what Geto saw in the weak became something vile, monkeys as he calls them, the pain of looking out for the weak was felt. The star plasma vessel they protected was ended by Toji, as well as the pain of Toji's sword as he cut down Geto, the self-proclaimed monkey. Pain Gojo could not feel, another narrative alignment to his domain. Recall that those inside the unlimited void feel so much that it's as if they're not feeling at all. For Geto, the sickening cycle of death and consumption that dictated his life was too much to sustain. They begin to feel like characters destined to be in duality with one another. As one goes left, the other goes right. As we touched on briefly before, it's the weak and a need to protect them that holds Gojo back in Shibuya. They're so meaningful to him at this point that it allows the curses to cage him in a sort of ethical container. He becomes the sorcerer Geto wanted him to be, and he would go on to nurture a future generation so that he might purify himself of the past failure with his best friend Geto, bringing him to his central goal in the series, which is fostering students that can one day surpass him. Something beyond just his own strength is going to be guiding the future through people like Yuji and Yuta so that he might avoid creating another Geto Suguru. He's saving these misfits from execution so that they may live out the best years of their life, and helping further the evolutionary impact of Gojo, setting them on a path toward that awakened mindset, which Megumi is able to discover to an extent in his fight against the Finger Bearer, where he unlocks his domain, taking him to that same state of excited, delirious, carefree madness, unlocking the power of freedom, moving on instinct rather than conscious thought, and ultimately triumphing in a battle he was going to sacrifice himself to win. This raises the question of who can and can't be the next Gojo. For Yuta, we get mixed answers. Gojo believes in him, but Kenjaku is confident that as long as he's restricting a soul, suppressing the freedom of another in order to derive his power, he can't be the next Gojo. Nonetheless, I predict that someone will eventually reach this coveted level, and I'm excited to find out. Quickly jumping to the most recent chapters of the series, the students Gojo raised have become monsters in their own right, waiting for the return of the Chosen One. He's left them alone for so long. They've endured many hardships because of it, and at last it seems Gojo's investment in the future has bore him fruit. He left with faith in all of them, and it remains to be seen if that was warranted. Many have fallen in his absence, but now it's time for the Honored One to regain his control. And I must say, the discipline of Gege in not giving so much as a glimpse of Gojo throughout all this time was gutsy as hell, and it pays off in full. Gojo's back with the same sarcasm and confidence as before, reassuring everyone of their safety, but also creating tension for what's to come. The build up to the most awaited fight in the series, and one of the most awaited in any series, I'm sure. Gojo versus Sukuna, the king of curses versus the strongest sorcerer. Leave some predictions for that upcoming fight in the comments. Personally, I'm rooting for Gojo. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like and subscribe. This was your boy Woski, uncovering the terrific qualities of Gojo's character, and I'll catch you later. Peace.